And here on WIL, David Allan Coe, and it's good to see you again, my friend.
Well, thank you. It's good to be here.
It's good to have you up here. Let's go back to the beginning with you, and there have been a lot of stories.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of press. And first of all, let me ask you, is David Allan Coe your real name?
Yes, it is.
That's what it has been since you were a kid.
Since I was born. I think the only difference is that on the birth certificate it says ALAN, and I spell it ALLAN now professionally.
Is it true that you were in a peck of trouble when you were a kid?
Yes. Started when I was 9 years old. I was placed in reform schools, and I did some 20 years in institutions.
Where was that?
Mostly in the state of Ohio, some in Michigan and Washington, D.C., but in Pennsylvania, but mostly in Ohio. I think I've been in every major institution in the state of Ohio.
Did music start when you were a kid? Where were you born?
I was born in Akron, Ohio.
Akron. Did music start there?
Well,
at a young age, or did it catch
yeah,
up with you?
Sort of at a young age. I played different instruments when I was younger. I never thought about being a singer until I got a little older, but I was always, into different musical instruments.
What was your childhood like?
Well, probably up until the time I went to reform school, it was shuffling back and forth between divorced parents, where you stay so many months with your father and so many months with your mother, and when you're with your mother, she tells you things about your father, and when you're with your father, she tells you things about your mother, until you don't trust either one of them and don't know who to believe, and you're a very confused child. And then my parents took me down to the courts, my father, and said that I was incorrigible, and had me placed in an institution called Star Commonwealth for Boys in Albion, Michigan. And that's what started the whole thing there. I was very confused about this happening to me. I couldn't understand why it happened to me. I didn't like it there. I was a 9-year-old boy who was, placed in a military academy.
Mm-hmm.
And I ran away with some older boys who stole a car. And we were so small at the time that you had to sit on each other's lap, and one guy worked the pedals and one guy steered the car. And that out of that it evolved. Once I had gotten convicted of a crime, and then from that point on, every time I was released from an institution, of course, I was on parole, and they had all these parole rules which I never could abide by, and I always either went back. But the most serious crime that I've ever been convicted for in my life is possession of burglar tools, for having a screwdriver in the glove compartment of a car which wasn't even my car, which I wasn't even in. So it's when I tell people that I'm an ex-convict, it's not because I think it makes me tough or anything. It's because I feel that there was a great injustice done to me as a youth, and I feel that by me speaking out about those things, that it might make a difference in the penal systems of America with other juveniles and the way that they're treated.
Let's kind of leave that behind now. And Johnny Cash, I believe, was instrumental in obtaining your freedom, wasn't he? Or
well, John was a great inspiration to me, because he was singing songs about prisons, and we all thought that he had been in prison, and then we found out that he hadn't, never been in prison. No. And which to me made it that much greater that this man had never been in prison, and yet he could sing a song about being in prison, and I could identify with it because I had been in prison. So he was a great inspiration to me.
I just remembered one thing. Weren't you in prison with your stepfather?
Yes, I was, yes. And after I got out of prison, I obtained my stepfather's release from prison. He was doing life in prison, and it took me 10 years of going through the courts and playing my music and everything like that, and becoming a responsible enough citizen to where they would release him in my custody.
What was the? Did you write your first song in prison or after you got out?
Well, I wrote my first songs in institutions when I was younger, in reform schools. I've been writing songs since I was about 12 years old. And there a lot of the songs that I do even today. I did an album not too long ago called Family Album, and all the songs that I sang on that album were songs that I wrote in the 1950s.
What was your first song success?
Well,
Was that Tanya Tucker's?
that was the biggest success, yes.
As a songwriter.
Would You Lay With Me in a Field of Stone was the biggest success, I believe. But I had a lot of songs recorded before then. I had songs recorded by David Rogers and Charlie Louvin and Tammy Wynette and George Jones and Leon Russell and Billy C. Cole, who's a disc jockey in Des Moines, Iowa.
We were talking earlier about things that I didn't know. You were a record promotion man.
Mm-hmm.
And you have quite a background in the music business that started even before you became known as a songwriter.
Right. Yeah, well, when I first went to Nashville, I was living in the back of my car, and I didn't have no place to put the car, and this fella that owns Supreme One Stop Records told me that I could park my car behind his record shop if I would work for him. So I started working there, sweeping the floors and bringing the vinyl to the girls that were pressing the records up and everything.
And then it just progressed from there to songwriting. And but you worked for Shelby Singleton in
Right.
record promotions.
Right. I was a promotion man for Shelby Singleton, and we had, like I said, one telephone, and you had to call every station in America, and I became aware of radio stations. You know, it's a strange thing about radio stations. You don't really think about, when you're listening to a radio, you don't really think about where that radio station's at or what it looks like. And when you go out and you start taking records around the radio stations, I mean, some of these places are in the middle of a cornfield somewhere.
I know.
And it's real strange, but I think it gives you a great perspective. And in them days, you had to just about put your records in the trunk of a car and go to every station, every place there was a tower, and go in and try to get your record played.
Did you get those records played?
Oh yeah, we got them played.
Did you beat your fist on the desk and say, "Play my record"? Or
no, I was a little more
sedate,
creative, I think, than that. What we did, we had a record called "Behind the Green Door," and we went and bought these great big doors and painted them green and put the record on the other side and sent them to all these disc jockeys, and they didn't know what to do with the doors. And then, of course, we had Harper Valley PTA, which, as I told you earlier, they had shut the electricity off and the water off in the building, and we went out. Shelby sent us out to buy cases of beer to seal the envelopes up to mail the record out in.
Now, there are a lot of stories, of course, that you could tell because you've been around so long in the music business, but all of a sudden, you got the desire, apparently, to perform yourself. Those
Yes.
songs that you were writing, which seems to be the story we get from a lot of writers. I want to sing the songs that I'm creating.
Mhm.
Is that the feeling you had, or?
Well, I had always been making records and performing. I just, I never really thought of it as a career. I just thought of it as a hobby, something to do.
Kind of like I do about astrology.
Really?
Yeah. I might bring up that David Allan Coe is an earth sign, Virgo,
Right.
and that's a pretty good sign for singers. You're well organized
Yeah.
in your own way.
Yeah, very much organized.
So after, let's say, Would You Lay With Me in a Field of Stone? Were you going to record that originally yourself?
No. When I first wrote that song, it was recorded by David Rogers and Jamie Ryan as a duet for Atlantic Records.
I remember them.
And they dropped Janie Ryan off the label, and they were going to take her voice off the record and put it out as a David Rogers single, and David said no. And so I went over there and said, look, what are you guys going to do? You've had this song for 6 months. It's a good song. I mean, I got to know what you're going to do here. And Atlantic says, well, we're not going to put it out. So I took it and gave it to Billy, and he cut it on Tanya, and then Atlantic says, you can't put the record out because you gave us an exclusive on the record. And we went through a whole thing, and I said, no, that's not true. I didn't give you an exclusive on the record. And then Tanya, bless her heart, was at an age where she was 13 years old, and she wasn't going to let her parents tell her what to do. And her mom and dad said, "No, you'll never release that record. It's not, it's not for you. You're a young girl." And she says, "I want the record out." And everybody said, "Well, radio stations will never play this record. It's suggestive lyrics." And I said, "I don't know what you're talking about, man. It's not suggestive lyrics, It's a love song. I wrote this song as wedding vows for my brother and his wife to get married by, and they got married by these vows, and it's a love song." And so Tanya finally won the argument, and they released a record, and of course it was the biggest record she's ever had, even up to now. And it also crossed her over into the pop field. And that's at the time when CBS Records then bought my contract from Shelby Singleton and signed me to Columbia Records, and I made my first album for them called The Mysterious Rhinestone Cowboy that was produced by Ron Bledsoe.
Now, about the time that you did Mysterious Rhinestone Cowboy and took on that name, I remember that Glenn Campbell came out with a song called Rhinestone Cowboy. And I remember at the time, I thought that we talked about it, I believe, the last time that you were here. And he just had that song out.
Well, actually, it was 5 years later that Glenn Campbell had the song out. A guy named Larry Weiss wrote that song, and I had been in L.A., and he had came and saw me play at the Troubadour, and he wrote this song, and he came to me and he said, "I wrote this song for you," because I had went to nudies, and I spent thousands of dollars having outfits made up, rhinestone outfits, and at the time in Nashville, everybody was trying to be a crossover singer. They all wanted to be pop singers. They didn't want to be country singers. They all said that rhinestone suits was hokey. They don't want to be identified with rhinestone suits anymore. Let's take them off. Let's put our three-piece suits on, and we're going to be pop singers, And so I said, "Well, I don't believe that. I believe in the rhinestone suits. When I went to see country and western singers, that was what was impressive to me, was the rhinestone suits and the diamond rings, and it was something that I could say as a kid, boy, I want to be like that. I'd like to be like that." So I, was just the most outrageous of them all. I just took it to extremes. I had rhinestone boots made, solid rhinestones that came all the way up to my knees, and had my name and the Rhinestone Cowboy on everything. And I spent all this money building this character up, and then 5 years later, Glenn Campbell comes along and sings the same song that Larry Weiss wrote about me, called the Rhinestone Cowboy. And he goes over to nudies and rents a shirt with rhinestones on it for his album cover. He doesn't even wear rhinestones on the stage. And then everybody started referring to him as the Rhinestone Cowboy. So that was when I put on on the album that I put out that year. Then I did an insert inside my album cover that said the Mysterious Rhinestone Cowboy is dead.
Well, do you still use the Mysterious Rhinestone Cowboy?
He shows up every now and then. At one of my concerts, there's just nothing I can do about it. Just out of the clear blue sky, this guy will show up with these rhinestone suits and and sing country music and do impersonations of all the country stars and everything. And it's he made an appearance in London, England, about 3 weeks ago.
What is the favorite song that you have ever recorded? Maybe not. It wasn't a single. Maybe it was in an album.
"Jody Like a Melody" is probably one of my favorite songs, and the reason for that is it was a thing that all these years country music had been written in a certain format, and that song was breaking out of that format and taking country music somewhere else where no one had taken it before.
Now you've been in other things besides writing and music. You've made a number of movies. Yes,
I've done 11 movies. Probably the most popular of which is Take This Job and Shove It, which has been on the cable television recently. And next to that would be a movie called Buckstone County Prison. I have a new movie coming out called Country Girl, which stars myself and lady that Ginger Alden, who found Elvis Presley's body. She was Elvis's girlfriend when he died.
Oh, yeah.
Her and I have made 3 movies together. We made a movie called The Living Legend, which is about Elvis Presley's life, and a movie called Lady Grey Superstar.
You like the movies?
Yes, very much so. The thing about movies is that as a creative person, when that director says roll camera, then it's you and that camera, and you can create as much as you want to. You don't have anybody, heckling you or nothing to stifle your energies whatsoever. You can just be as creative as you want to be.
What do you think of television?
Television.
What if somebody offered you a live weekly show, like the Barbara Mandrell thing or the Johnny Cash thing?
If I could do the show the way I wanted to do it, and if I had control over who my guests were going to be, I would love to do something like that. I think that would be one of the best ways that I could show my diversified talents. I would not want a strict country and western format show because I do so many other things besides that. I'm a magician, so I would like to have Doug Henning or different magicians that I know on my show. I'm a ventriloquist. I would like to have other ventriloquists on my show. I'm very much a 50s person, and I would probably have Shauna Na or different groups like that come on the show, as well as country people, just to show the different talents of David Allan Coe, the different things that I can do. I play 17 different instruments, and it's hard to get that across sometimes in your concerts.
You're very versatile, and sometimes have been called an outlaw, along with Waylon and Willie and the others. And I believe you have an interesting story about how that outlaw bit started.
Well, the outlaw thing started. Actually, we were doing a concert. Willie and Waylon and myself were doing a concert, and I had already played and done my part of the show. And at the time, I was riding motorcycles, and I was riding with a motorcycle club called the Outlaws, and I had my outlaw colors on. And I jumped up on stage with Waylon, and Willie came out on stage, and some photographer took a picture of that, and you could see the back of my colors where it said Outlaws, and the headline said, "The Outlaws are coming to town." And press people just picked it up, and from then on they started saying we were outlaws. I don't know why.
Did you do the song Willie, Waylon, and Me after that show?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
Was that where that song came from?
That was where that came from, yes.
Okay, now let's see. We want to get to the new album, I think. Okay, you've recorded a brand new album for Columbia Records. And there are some interesting stories and some good songs in that album. And it's not even out yet. Won't be out till April, right?
Right.
But tell us something about the album, some of your favorite songs, and something about the background singers in that album.
Okay.
Or foreground singers.
Yeah. Well, the album is called Castles in the Sand, and the song Castles in the Sand is a song that I wrote in 1973 about Bob Dylan. When I first signed with Columbia Records, everybody was saying that I was going to be the new Bob Dylan. And I told them I didn't want to be the new anything. I just wanted to be David Allan Coe. And everything I picked up said Nashville, Bob Dylan, David Allan Coe. So I wrote this song called Castles in the Sand about that incident. And I'm dedicating the album to Bob Dylan. So that's the major force in the album. I have some guest artists. Lacey J. Dalton sings with me on one song. And then I have some unknown singers. I have the desk clerk from the Hall of Fame Motor Court.
Yeah, tell us about that.
Well,
that song is called what?
It's called Don't Be a Stranger.
Don't Be a Stranger.
And this girl never sang before in her life. And I had called the Hall of Fame, and just hearing her voice on the phone, she had a very sexy voice on the phone. And so I asked her if she sang, and she said no, that she didn't sing. And I says, well, do you sing with the radio or anything? And she says, yes, I sing along with the radio. So I said, well, I'm going to take you in the studio. I want you to listen to this tape of this song that I've recorded. I'm going to give you a set of lyrics. I want you to just sing along with, just like you're singing with the radio, okay? Well, I called ahead and had them hide some microphones in the room that she was going to be in, so she didn't know she was being recorded. And I recorded her voice singing along with me. And then in the mix, I just took my voice off in places and left hers on, and some places left her voice on and took mine off, and some places we sing together. And that's how that came about on that song. And then
what is her name?
Her name is Eve Shapiro.
Eve Shapiro.
Yes.
And Billy Sherrill's cousin is on this album too.
Billy Sherrill's niece.
Niece.
Right. Diane Sherrill. And she's been singing around Nashville for about 15 years in what we call the alley, which Printer's Alley, which is where most of the tourists go. And she's been singing at the captain's table in different places. But Diane has a speech impediment, and she's never been able to get a recording contract because of her speech impediment. But to me, I thought that was what was unique about the girl, that she had a speech impediment. And so I put her on my album with me, and to let people see for themselves that, that's what makes somebody unique. I don't want a girl that sounds like Dolly Parton, And
What's the name of that song?
The song is The Fool Inside of Me.
Fool Inside of Me.
Off of that album.
Everybody has a mental picture of people, especially people on the radio. Radio is an imagination medium.
That's right.
So they have a mental picture of David Allan Coe as an outlaw who sometimes gets in a scuffle, who might fight at the drop of the hat. And this is not the David Allan Coe that I have known or that I know.
Right. Well, the problem with that is this. First of all, David Allan Coe is a man. I'm a man that's been through an awful lot in my life.
Yeah.
And I will not take too much pushing from anybody, But I don't start trouble. I'm not a troublemaker. And I don't, when I go someplace, I'm going there to play my music, Now, if somebody there takes it upon themselves to throw a beer bottle and hit me in the head with it, I'm not going to say, gee, folks, I mean, I'm going to do my best, to whip this guy if I can, And I don't think that's wrong, I think that's just being a man.
Now, there are a lot of people that will say, oh, well, you don't go anywhere where people throw beer bottles at you. But we know better, because there used to be a place down in Texas called the Jacksboro Highway.
Oh, yeah.
Between Dallas and Fort Worth. And the Rio Palm Mile at Longview.
Well, you know yourself, when I started singing country music, in Texas, they actually had chicken wire in front of the stage to catch the bottles when people throw them at you. And you got to imagine that you're talking about a 20-year-old kid that had hair down to his waist when it wasn't even fashionable to have long hair, and was wearing earrings in both ears and singing country music and yodeling, which was totally unheard of. I mean, you might as well have been black and been in Georgia or Selma, Alabama, And so for me to go in there and against all those odds and still come out with a recording career, I think is remarkable.
Is that where the song "Long-Haired Redneck" came from?
Yes, "Long-Haired Redneck" came from those days. It's a funny thing. When I first started in this business, they said I was too country, and they wouldn't play my records because I was too country. And I did a song on my first album called "Fraulein," and I cut another song on that album called "Crying My Heart Out Over You." And they said it was too country that I couldn't put it on the album, and Ricky Skaggs won Song of the Year with the same song, which is a very old song that he's
re-recorded. And it's still country.
And it is, and it's just as country as it was when I did it.
That's right.
And which, to me, is it's a very strange thing. It's like, here you got this guy, David Allan Coe, who has this reputation of being one thing, and then his music is another thing, okay? In other words, they're saying, well, he looks like this, but he's too country. He sings too country. All right, now you got Ricky Skaggs coming along, who's just as country as David Allan Coe, and you got John Anderson, and so now, where before everybody was saying, well, David Allan Coe's all right, but he's kind of mainstream country, and we need something that's going to cross over pop, okay? Well, now it's saying it's okay to play David Allan Coe records now because he's country, and we're playing country music now, because I think it's going back to that, It's now going from everybody wanting to be a pop star, to realizing that everybody can't be a pop star, And it's just, I don't care what you do to Loretta Lynn, she's still going to be Loretta Lynn.
That's right.
And she can make Coal Miner's Daughter, and it can sell, all the money in the biggest movie in the world, but you're not going to get her records played on a rock and roll station, and I don't care what she does, she's still country, all right? So for her to want to cross over and be a pop singer is ridiculous, But somebody along the line said, Loretta, you can do it. So she started dressing differently, doing her hair differently, and trying to become a pop singer, And then Crystal Gale, her sister, comes along, who has every chance in the world of being a pop singer, who just wants to be a country singer. So it's ridiculous.
What about the song "You Never Even Call Me by My Name"? Where we've gotten to a lot of songs, but where did that come from? I mean, it came from Stevie Goodman.
That's right.
But
Steve Goodman. Let me just tell your listeners about Steve Goodman. Steve Goodman wrote a song called "Riding on the City of New Orleans," which was a big Arlo Guthrie hit and a Johnny Cash hit. But Steve Goodman is a unique person because he has leukemia, and he's had leukemia for almost all of his life. He's not been supposed to live. He's battled all the odds of having leukemia, and is now married. He has children. He's a great songwriter and a great guitar player and a great entertainer. And John Prine and Steve Goodman are probably two of my closest friends. And when I heard that song, I just said to Stevie, I said, that's a great song.
Did you actually tell him it's not a country song?
Well, between John Prine and myself, we did. But at the time, nobody knew who John Prine was, so it didn't make sense for me to say John Prine's name on the record.
David Allan Coe, it's been a pleasure having you here on WIL and with us again. And don't make your visit so infrequent from now on.
Well, I'd like to come up here and do a concert and play for you all one of these days soon. And
what's the name of the band?
Again. The David Allan Coe Band.
David Allan Coe. That's very original.
Very
We'll
good.
look forward to having you in St. Louis.
All right.
Thanks for being with us.